My name is Paul Kaplan. This is another talk in the series on Judeo-Christian resurgence. And in this talk we will discuss the enormous significance and importance of Dr. John Hagee's organization, Christians United for Israel. Now, Christians United for Israel is the largest of the many organizations that support Israel, which is why this talk concentrates on Christians United for Israel. However, anything we have to say here applies equally to every other organization supporting Israel, and we ask you to accept this article in that spirit. So let's begin by saying that although Christians United for Israel's support is greatly appreciated, it is not altogether clear to many Jews why this organization supports Israel so passionately. And strangely enough, the entire government and diplomatic corps of Israel also seems to be somewhat nonplussed by Christians United for Israel's passion. And Israel doesn't seem to know exactly what to do with this passion. However, whatever CUFI's reasons may be, this organization is about to discover that it is of far greater importance than it realizes, not only to Israel, but to the entire Western world, and that it will play a major role in what Christians call the second coming. Now, the last words of Jesus as he died on the cross were, "It is finished." It is finished. And these three words tell us that he believed that he had achieved his purpose. But what did he mean? What was this great purpose that was so much worth dying for? And the answer to this question will open the eyes of the most informed Jews. Christians United for Israel will begin to feel the weight of the responsibility that they have brought upon themselves. So let's consider what Jesus meant by the words, "It is finished." Firstly, we need to realize that he was driven by a duty that he alone understood and he alone could carry out. And he knew that that duty would require him to suffer an agonizing death. Now, New Testament scripture is clear enough on this matter, but apparently not clear enough for Christian clergy. So let's deal with this matter of his fear and despair. So his fear and his despair is addressed 3 times in the King James Bible. Firstly, in Matthew 26, verse 39. "And he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." And then again in Matthew 26:42, "And he went away again the second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me except I drink it, thy will be done." And then yet again in Mark 14:36, "And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt." So what was this terrible duty that he wanted so desperately to set aside? What agony awaited him from which he prayed for deliverance? The answer is that the nation and the whole world depended on his courage to do what had to be done. The Pharisee rabbis had colluded with cynical Romans to replace Moses' oral law with their own rubbish known as the Talmud. The oral law had been created by Moses himself to serve as the teaching material for the Levites to hammer the 10 Commandments into the people. And without the oral law, the Levites could no longer teach the 10 Commandments as Moses wanted them taught. So Jesus fought with all his energy against the Talmud by preaching the genuine oral law as laid down by Moses. And his delivery was so passionate and powerful that he made the rabbis look bad. and his fame spread far and wide as he intended, and he became a threat to the entire Talmud racket. And he hoped to build a following large and powerful enough to discredit the Pharisees and their Talmud and prevent them from handing him over to the Romans for execution. And they were going to do this in order to preserve their Talmud racket. He knew this. And tragically, it became clear to him that the rabbis were going to be able to close in on him before his following was strong enough, and he would run out of time. So he therefore had to change his plan. He had to go directly to Jerusalem and confront the rabbis in person and face the inevitable consequences. And during his angry confrontation with the rabbis, he leveled his famous accusation that their Talmudic destruction of the oral law would leave the nation desolate. And later the same day at the Olive Grove, he told his closest followers that the rabbis and their Talmud would indeed cause the nation to forget the 10 commandments of the covenant. And he was also aware that the Romans, probably encouraged by their Pharisee accomplices, were planning to launch a new religion amongst the Gentiles based upon his own preachings. And this new religion would outnumber the Jews 100 times. And the loss of the covenant, together with the rise of the new Gentile religion, would set the Jews at odds with the new religion, for they would never accept the idea of his divinity or that they should worship him as God. And this ongoing conflict would cause the Jewish people to be put through such hellish torment as had never been seen before and would never be seen again. And this tribulation would continue for a period known only to God. And throughout this terrible period, the rabbis would make sure that the Jewish people never found out how Jesus had tried to defend the covenant. However, before he died on the cross, Jesus realized that he had done enough to keep the covenant alive, and that the day would surely come, however far in the future, when a small number of informed Jews would understand what he had done and what had really taken place, and how deceptive the Pharisee rabbis had been for almost 2,000 years. And this awakening would take place after the enormous Roman religion began to fail. And these elect Jews would launch a furious uprising against the rabbis who were still living off the proceeds of the Talmud and their own deception. And this turmoil amongst the Jews would also awaken the Christians to what Jesus had done, and they would add their weight to the overthrow of the rabbis. And the restoration of the covenant would become the prime purpose of all Jews and Christians. And when this task was successfully accomplished, this would open the way to the blessed time of peace and prosperity predicted in these scriptures. So, to sum up, the duty which drove Jesus to certain death was the knowledge that the covenant alone stood between humanity and the eternal misery of godlessness, and that he alone could preserve it. And if he had not honored this agonizing and self-appointed duty, we today would have no defense against the left, and our lot would be eternal godless misery. Now, this video is meant to convey that Christians United for Israel consists of the sort of Christians that both Jesus and John foresaw 2,000 years ago. And it is reasonable to believe that CUFI will turn out to be more important to the Western world than any other assembly on earth. Now, if you generally agree with this video, then you'll certainly agree that this viewpoint must be made known as widely as possible. The enormous power of the internet can and should be harnessed by God's people. And if we do this, the left will be unable to do anything about it. However, internet publicity costs money, and if ever there was a case for crowdfunding, it is here and now. Your financial contributions to our Patreon site, however small, can flow into a mighty river that can move people to action throughout the world. And you may also want to read our book, God versus the Left, which provides the broad biblical picture of how we got where we are and how we need to get out of the mess we're in. This book is available from Amazon. And finally, your comments and suggestions are just as essential as your financial contributions and will be welcome here and on our Patreon and Facebook sites. No one can handle something of the magnitude of the second coming without the help of millions of decent people. And please don't forget to click the subscribe button, because we'll have no shortage of enemies wanting to ban these videos, and we may have to rely on email to get the videos to you in future. So this is Paul Kaplan signing out and thanking you for your time and attention.